Hi guys! A few days ago I finished playing through Outlast 2. It was a fun experience playing through this game, though it wasn't the first time I had seen the story of the game at least. It's the first time I played for it. But it wasn't the first time I had seen the story of the game because I remember watching PewDiePie's playthrough of it back in like 2017. Although I don't remember whether I actually watched through it, like through the whole thing back then, and whether I also checked out some of Jacksepticeye's playthrough as well. Because I certainly remembered a lot of the events that happened in the game, I just didn't necessarily remember the order in which they did or the full context about it. But it turns out I did remember a lot of the things that happened. So I guess I watched PewDiePie's playthrough of it back then. But still, going through it was pretty fresh experience, you know? I still didn't... It still feels very different to watch somebody play through something and to play it yourself. It is obviously more immersive when you play it yourself. So I still think it was a really cool experience and might as well have been as if I didn't know what was gonna happen, because like I said, I didn't remember everything or all the context. And when you're playing through the game, you don't necessarily remember everything about it. I kind of remembered it in the same way one remembers a song. It's like, if you asked me about the events of the game, of a random event of the game, I wouldn't be able to necessarily mention it, but as I was playing through the game, I was able to remember, oh yeah, so this is next, and yeah, this is next. Oh yeah, I now remember watching him go through that part. That's kind of how a lot of the game went through, but it was still fun. It was still pretty fun, and I did really enjoy it. At first, if you didn't see my playthrough, at first, I was actually surprised how much I wasn't into the game. I mean, admittedly, like, Outlast 1 is a really cool game. It was a really iconic game, and I already have like a deep emotional attachment for it, because it's a game that I watched people play and played through myself like almost 10 years ago at this point. So I already have history with that game, so nostalgia is gonna play a big factor in why I actually enjoy it. But I genuinely think it was a really well-made game with a lot of really well-crafted horror moments in it. And in my opinion, Outlast 1 relied much more on actually unnerving you and having a lot of claustrophobic close encounters with the villains where you're supposed to carefully evade them in a closed environment, compared to Outlast 2, which much more relied on those exciting and fast-paced and tense chase sequences. And we didn't really start getting those chase sequences until like the episode 2 that I recorded, so at least until you're 2 hours in. Or at least they didn't start to be as meaningful until that point forward, because after that they actually become much more common, debatably maybe too common. But I kind of enjoy that, because to me, especially when I was playing through it on like a medium difficulty, I think we were playing through it in the last playthrough, it was really kind of stressful. Maybe debatably too stressful. And the thing is, I love horror games. I like horror games, but I don't like being stressed. That is my issue with it. And if you go back and like watch my playthrough of Alien Isolation, which I don't necessarily want to force you to, because the quality of it is pretty shit. Both audio quality, visual quality, everything. I probably will end up replaying that at some point in the future, we'll see. But playing through it, especially early on, was so fucking tense and stressful to the point where I literally couldn't continue for more than like debatably an hour. I was barely able to go for an hour. And even for like Outlast 1, like I said, I was really tense and stressed all the time. It was just so stressful that it was so hard actually being able to record more than one episode a day, which is kind of what I attempt to, so I can actually do it as quick as possible and move on to the next thing that I have on my schedule. But With Outlast 2, because it was more focused on those chase sequences, it perfectly fit with the kind of like gameplay focus that I have, which is like finish the game as soon as possible. Like still get to explore and experience the game in its full, but also try not to waste time. And that was actually really frustrating to watch other people do that shit, because I don't do that shit, and it's really frustrating to me when they just waste their time just walking around, and especially when they're so dumb they do not understand where to go. That was really frustrating watching other people go through. And it's weird because a lot of people seem to struggle to know where to go, but I feel like it's not that hard to understand. Like, I had one moment, I think, which was kind of hard for me to know where to go. That was with the water wheel and where you were supposed to go, because I mean, I feel like it just wasn't necessarily made that clear, but I don't really think that's the case for the whole game. Like, sure, there are moments where you could easily kind of get stuck, but I kind of like it. I kind of like it not being necessarily so obvious where you're supposed to go. Because compared to Outlast 1, which is like very, very blatant where you're supposed to go. It's very blatant. Outlast 2 in comparison feels like, obviously, because it's already like a more open setting, it feels like more right for it to not be a clear-cut way in a direction in which you're supposed to go. Which is also kind of weird thing about this second game, because it's kind of both more open-ended in the ways you can, in directions you can go, but at the same time it's a really very railroaded experience, if that makes any sense. It's kind of weird how it's both of those things. And yeah, when I was playing through it, I feel like most of the scenes which were in the wilderness didn't really entertain me that much. Like, yeah, I ended up enjoying quite a lot of it, especially like those people sick with syphilis, I think it was. Let's call them just the zombie people. That sequence was really cool to me. I ended up enjoying it quite a lot. It was really creepy and gruesome and gross, and I liked it. It definitely left an impact on me. But for the most part, I feel like the wilderness wasn't that engaging overall. I like it as an aesthetic because it's different from what we had in Outlast 1, but it didn't really scare me, so to speak. It was it was more so creepy and disgusting than it was scary. In the same way that the first game was. On the other hand, the scenes in the school were creepy as fuck. And I definitely think the strength of this game is definitely in those sequences at the school. Maybe because it's just more similar to the kind of environment that we had in 1. That's why my brain kind of makes it feel like more right. But the reason why I think so is because of the monster. Because the monster that we had in the school, like what I call the Hanged Man, I don't know what the actual name for this villain is, but I like the name the Hanged Man because he made Jessica seem like she hanged herself, and there was a lot of Hangman games that you were supposed to find around the school as you were being chased by it, and I feel like it's a really cool name, so that's what I even call one of the episodes, because it's so fucking cool. But that monster is really cool, especially the gimmick that they have with it, where you can see its shadow walking around you from time to time. Like, that was fucking cool, and it's fucking creepy, because you don't necessarily know, and your brain cannot necessarily process in a second whether he's actually there or it's just his shadow. And that was so fucking cool. That was by far the scariest, like genuinely creepy part of the game. Easily the scariest. Sure, we had a lot of tense sequences and stressful sequences, like with Martha, the lady with the cross. She's pretty scary, and especially with those heretic mud people who are chasing you quite a lot of times. You have like 3 or 4 chases with them. Jesus Christ. But that was also a really cool sequence, bunch of sequences with them. I really did enjoy them. They were also pretty terrifying, but the thing is, they are terrifying, like I said, in a more unnerving kind of way, where you're just scared that they're right up on your ass, that they're chasing you, and that they're going to kill you. Whereas with like the hanged man in the school, you're actually afraid of seeing him. Like, you're afraid of seeing his shadow, because he's more like I guess like an eldritch monster, because you don't know necessarily what he's going to do, and the fact that you can see sometimes his shadow, so he's there but he's not necessarily going to harm you. Like, it just feels like more of like a primal horror kind of thing. And especially for me, it works so well because when I was a kid, I got traumatized by watching the Ring movie, to the point where even to this day I have this fear that whenever I'm going somewhere in the dark, be it literally from my room to the toilet, or walking outside, I don't know, I'm always worried that I'm gonna see something. I'm not even worried that I'm gonna die, because that is ridiculous. Of course I'm not gonna die by fucking Samara coming out of the TV or coming out in the corridor on my way to the toilet, but I'm just afraid that I'm gonna see something. And this is the kind of fear that the sequences in the school kind of play up, at least when they actually do play it up. Like, with the shadow showing up from time to time. And it's fucking creepy. It's fucking creepy. And I'm pretty sure, like, the one, like, genuine scream when playing one of these horror games has given me was from this game, and from sequence in which the shadow jumped in front of me. Like, that was fucking creepy. That was the one genuine scream that I've actually made. Sure, it wasn't like, ah, kind of scream, but I still, like, genuinely kind of screamed. Which is kind of crazy for me to do, because I try to be, like, relatively quiet, because I don't live on my own, and it just feels awkward to scream loud in my room as my parents are in the room beside me. So the fact that it managed to kind of break through for me like that it's just commendable, you know. But yeah, I really enjoyed the chases in Outlast 2. I feel like, as a playthrough experience, I feel like I enjoyed that much more than what we had in Outlast 1, which was like a more of like a unnerving experience of like just walk around and hide in the shadows. Whereas in this one, there was a lot more of like just run, just fucking run. And that's kind of the approach that I took. At a certain point, I was just running because it's clearly what the game wanted me to go with. And I don't know if necessarily that which caused the story to be a little lacking, but the story is a little bit lacking compared to the first one. And admittedly, for the first one, you actually have many more readable documents and readable notes. In this one, I didn't really bother with reading any of the documents, because they're like fucking miles long, and it's just gospel bullshit. Which does kind of, I guess, explain you and give you information about the characters, just like the first one. But I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit too heavy on those stuff, and it doesn't really give it to you in like a digestible way. I really wish they did it in a more digestible way, but to be honest, I don't know how they could do it. At least I watched Markiplier's playthrough of it as well, and he pretty much went through almost all of them, so I kind of got all of that as well. But yeah, story-wise, I think I like the stuff with Jessica in the school, and I like what is supposed to be the reason for why everybody's going insane in this place, because of course it's not the fucking world ending, but it's actually like Murkoff doing experiments and shit. I like that aspect as well, but I'm really just not that interested in religious stuff like this, like religious storyline. I feel like not only is that a very cliche thing you can go for as a concept for your horror be it game, movie, TV series, or whatever. But it's just not that entertaining to me. I don't really care about religion, so it just does not appeal to me. It doesn't mean it can be made good, but it just means that it doesn't appeal to me, and I'd rather have something else. Like the first one, sure, has some religious symbolism, but it's a much more science-based game compared to this. And I guess the one way where you can make the religious crap enjoyable is if you actually kind of commit to it actually being real. Because if you're just having crazy people spout religious bullshit, it's kind of like preaching to the choir. Pardon my pun. Because, yeah, to me, in some way, shape, or form, people who think that religion is real, well, I don't care as long as you keep it to yourself. I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't think people who are religious are smart, okay? And I'm sorry if I offend somebody, but that is kind of how I feel. As an atheist, that's how I feel. Because I feel like the only rational, logical conclusion one can get to when they consider the possibility of whether a religion is real or not is that it's not real. Or at the off chance that it is, then God is the bad guy. Because all the things that you can see about God and him dictating how humans they should live by the rules and the commandments and everything is the exact same bullshit that dictators use to control their people. And the same tactics were employed by the church over the centuries that dictators in this day and age use. So it's hard not to make the comparison of God to a dictator, you know? But yeah, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. So as I was saying, I guess the one way you can make a religious game like this entertaining to me is if you actually commit to the religious stuff and the end of the world being real, because I liked the ending of Far Cry 5. Spoiler alert. If you don't want to get spoiled, go watch my playthrough and come back here. But in the ending of that one, it turns out that the religious people were right and the end was coming. Although I don't necessarily think it was them getting signs from God or whatever, but instead like hearing that shit was heating up between certain countries or whatever. I don't remember, but I remember that I read a comment or something on Reddit where people said that throughout the game you can hear news about the possibility of war rising or whatever, so it was like a nuclear war that was happening and not God sending nukes or whatever. But it was still cool that they actually ended up committing to the fact that they predicted it, you know? That was really cool, and that made the character of Joseph Seed that much more entertaining. And in this case, if you follow the theory that it was Murkoff doing experiments and what happened at the end was just like a bomb or whatever, I mean, it's still entertaining, I guess. I, again, like that aspect of it, but I feel like they didn't really play it up enough. I really feel like it was just kind of like a background thing which they just put there as a possibility of how we could explain all this shit, and then when people kind of started theorizing about that after playing the game, the creators were like, sure, yeah, we'll go with that. That's kind of how it comes off. It doesn't really feel necessarily as like a included thing in the game. Or at least if it is in some of those sequences near the lake where you can see like the factory and shit, I feel like they should have done more of that. I really feel like they should have. But yeah, am I forgetting something? I guess let's just go over some of the villains in this, because we already kind of went over the Hanged Man. I mentioned Marta, which I feel like she is cool in concept, but the execution is really not as cool as the Hanged Man or any of the villains from the original Outlast. She kind of feels even more lame than Frank Manera from the Whistleblower DLC, who already felt like a lamer version of Traeger in a way. You know, you get what I mean? It just kind of feels like it's derivative in some ways. Sure, it's still a very distinct character with distinct gimmicks and everything, but I don't know, it just didn't really feel as impactful. So far in the Outlast thing, the three characters who are the most impactful are Eddie, Chris Walker, and the Hangman. They're definitely the best villains and the most threatening in my eyes, at least. Although I would say also that Chris Walker has kind of lost his threateniness as well, because in that game you play against him quite a few times. So I guess maybe the Whistleblower is actually a better one. Yeah, I would actually go with the Whistleblower for Outlast 1. But yeah, I actually really want to learn more about the Outlast lore and what Murkoff is doing. I want to see more of a development on that, and I want to go back to like a focus on them, with them doing more experiments, or maybe get it like an actual sequel to Outlast 1, like a proper sequel, not a spin-off sequel thing that we get with Season 2. Not Season 2, Outlast 2. And maybe we're gonna learn something more with the Outlast Trials, which is supposed to be a game that comes out this year. And when it does, I'll probably play it. I'll probably play it as soon as it's released. We'll see though. We'll see. It will depend on how pricey it is, because it is gonna be a spin-off game, so I assume it's gonna be cheaper than like a mainstream game, but I'm a patient gamer. I can wait. I just feel like it would be beneficial for my channel to play it as soon as it's released, you know? Because for me, Outlast, I own the game for like almost 10 years. Outlast 2, I bought, when was it? I think it was in 2020. I think it was in summer of 2020 before going to university. I think that's when I got it, because it was cheap at the time by my standards. But yeah. So yeah, Martha, kind of a lame villain. I don't really know how I feel about whatever the name was of like the tiny guy on the back of the other taller guy. They were kind of interesting, definitely more interesting than Martha to me, but they still didn't really amount to too much. They were just fine overall, just like Martha. And for the rest, pretty much, we have the heretics creatures, which chase you for quite a few times. Like, I think they give you the most chases in the game. And they were definitely entertaining, they were scary, and I love a lot of the sequences because it was just run, and it was tense, and I like that shit, I really do. It's some of my favorite shit in Outlast 1, and in this one, I really enjoyed it as well. And I guess we're kind of also forgetting some of like the zombie people that were chasing you around in the sequences with the Hunchback of Outlast. I like those as well, but it was creepy. It felt like Smeagol chasing you around, and that was pretty cool. But I feel like the Heretics was kind of that, but also even more scary because they were like kind of humanoid, but also kind of not. So they both would like kind of walk and stand up. They were pretty creepy. I really enjoyed that. I almost actually forgot to talk about the mine part of the game, where just like in the mines, with the mine carts and everything. That was actually something that I completely forgot was actually part of the game, and I really enjoyed it. And it just has made me wish for a Descent game more and more. Because it really shows how cool it actually is, especially in some of the sequences where you're like crawling between the rocks, like through a cave tunnel. Like, that is really cool. And I really want a video game that emulates that. That emulates the feeling of being like thousands of feet underground and being stuck in a cave. Like, that could be actually really cool. Although, admittedly, I don't know what you could really do with like a cave game like that. If somebody does a game like that where you're stuck in a cave, it would have to be probably a small indie game, because you certainly can't have an Outlast game that is like 8 hours long just set in a cave. But I still think it would really be really cool. I feel like somebody smarter than me could probably figure out a way to do it. And also, talking about the length of the game, it is kind of weird, because Outlast 2 is essentially just as long as Outlast 1 and its DLCs combined are. For me, it turned out to be 4 episodes of Outlast 1, including the Whistleblower DLC, and Outlast 2 turned out to be 4 episodes as well. Although, I guess it's still like 4 episodes, but I was gonna say that one of the episodes is like 2.5 hours long, if I remember correctly, because I wasn't sure how much of the game I actually had left, so I just wanted to keep going until we get to the end, because I thought it was closer than it actually was, but it's still essentially 8 hours, pretty much. So it's really interesting how essentially they are the same length, but I feel like the weight of Outlast 2 is bigger. It's kind of how like an object can have the same volume or a different mass, or the same mass but a different volume. I don't really remember exactly which one was which, but you get what I mean. Like, they both are the same length, but the actual content is kind of different weight. And it's kind of weird, because Outlast 1 is kind of heavy in a different way compared to Outlast 2. Outlast 1 is more heavy in the sense that there are many more scenes or sequences, should I say, in which you're just supposed to just sit in the dark and maybe crawl around the creature that is chasing you. Whereas in Outlast 1, you don't really have much of that, but you get much more exploration, much more random enemies, much more different locations you get to explore, and many more chase sequences. Because in Outlast 1, I can remember kind of only one sequence on the main Outlast game, which feels anywhere close to what the chase sequences in Outlast 2 are. And that is the sequence which is right before you meet Traeger. That is the one sequence in Outlast 1 that really sticks out as a memorable chase sequence. We do have some more interesting ones in Outlast Whistleblower, but again, the most major one is close to the end, where you're running away from Gluskin. That is kind of the scariest one, I guess, or the closest we get to the Outlast 2 ones. But in Outlast 2 we have like 10 from 3 or 4 different characters, and it's pretty cool. I really do enjoy all the chase sequences in it. So yeah, it just feels like Outlast 2 is much more packed, even though it's the same length, you know? But I do enjoy it. I'm glad that I actually ended up enjoying it much more, because like I said, in the beginning, it really started off really kind of weirdly unengaging. And it was weird for me, because I actually expected to really enjoy it, because I was really hyped to actually be finally playing this game. And then when I started it, I was like, I don't really feel anything. I really don't feel engaged or interested to continue playing. But then after I played the first episode, I started to get into the mood to play the game. And it ended up being really fun. I really did enjoy it. And I don't really think I have much to say other than this. Maybe I'm forgetting some random bits, but you can't really manage to get up everything you have to say about it. I guess we should also maybe talk a little bit about Noth, who was supposed to be the bad guy of this game, but you kind of don't realize that he doesn't really show up in the game almost at all. Like, you have one sequence where he shows up when they're killing the guy on the wheel in the chapel, and then at the end of the game, and you kind of completely forget that he's a thing in a way, or that he's like an actual character, because at least in like Outlast 1 you had Wernicke, the doctor, but you didn't expect that he was going to be alive because he was supposed to be dead. But in this one, he was the bad guy. The main bad guy was supposed to be very much alive, but he literally didn't show up until that sequence and then the end, and then he kills himself. Yeah, I don't know. I just want more explanations about what happens in Outlast 2. I feel like they didn't really satisfy us in that regard. I really feel like we deserve a DLC of Outlast 2. Which I know that the creators have said that due to the nature of what Outlast 2 is, it's harder to actually create a DLC that could actually be really interesting and explain some of the stuff that we got in the game, I guess. But I would still like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be even in the same locations. It could be some kind of DLC that was more connected to like the factory and the place those lights and radio waves were coming from. That could actually be really cool because I'm really curious about the theory behind what was happening in that place and what was Murkoff testing for and what were they doing and everything. I don't know, just that excites me more than all the religious crap. But yeah, overall a really fun game, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing through it, honestly, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching people play through it. But yeah, I am curious, what do you guys think about Outlast 2? So comment your thoughts down below and let's have a discussion about it. And also, before in this video, I do want to tell you that the next game that I'm going to be playing on the channel, which by the point at which I upload this video, I probably have already recorded it, but anyway, the next game that I'm going to be playing is going to be a little underrated, but I think decently known game called Driver San Francisco. It's a racing game, but it honestly has a really cool story, so if you haven't played it, definitely go and play it, because we're going to be having a really cool experience, and I might be talking a lot about spoilers as I'm playing the game, because it's such a fun game, man, with such a fun story. It's actually a surprisingly unique racing game. Like I said, go and play it if you haven't played it, because it's a fun game, and I can't wait to play through it, because when I played through it for the first time back in, I think it was 2020, or might have been even like, no, I think it actually was 2019. Because the thing I remember, after I graduated, right before I actually started my YouTube channel, I obviously got my PC with my graduation money that my parents gave to me. I bought the PC, and it was the first time that I actually had a powerful enough PC to actually play the game. And I played through it, even though I wanted to keep it for the YouTube channel, I just couldn't stop myself, and I just played through it for like 2 days, and it was so fucking satisfying and fun, especially theorizing about what's gonna happen and what is actually happening in the game, because it's a really intriguing story. And it was fun, and I can't wait to play it on the channel, because it was a great game. So that is what is coming. There is the possibility of which other games that I could be playing after that include games like Life is Strange 2, City Skylines, Mudrunner also has a big possibility of me playing it. Mirror's Edge also has a big possibility of me playing it. Hell, maybe even some GTA game, as well as the game Transformers Devastation. I'm kind of thinking about exactly which game I'm gonna go for after this, because I want to go for something different. Potentially I might even go for Far Cry 6 actually. Because we haven't played a Far Cry game in a while, and I know Far Cry 6 is a thing, but I've kind of decided to kind of stay away from it for a while, at least maybe until it kind of goes down in price a little bit, because I can't really afford that much money for a game, at least however money it was last time. I don't know, $70 was it? I mean, I only really checked how much it was when it was originally released, and that's just way too much money for me. Hell, I just right now have like managed to make that much money off of my videos. Like, I've only made like 70, actually I have not made that much. I need to make that much to actually get my money from YouTube. I need to make like $70 before I can actually pull out money from YouTube AdSense. So I can't really spend that much money on a game, but I could potentially think about it. We'll see. It's just there's a lot of games that I want to play. A lot of games that I want to play. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, before in this video though, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently one patron on Patreon, Deadpool. Thank you for your support, I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me that you have decided to support me, have continued to support me for such a long time. Hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. And now, before we end this video, I just want to talk about something to you guys very quickly, which some of you may or may have not noticed before or know about me, that being the fact that I am trans. And yes, this may come as shocking to some of you because I don't really flaunt it that much on my channel, or at least I feel like I don't. Outside of like my K-pop reactions, which is where I feel like the most comfortable being myself like this. And yeah, I am in fact trans. I'm not necessarily full-on male to female, but I heavily want to transition to being pretty female. I do consider myself more non-binary though, or maybe gender fluid would be the best descriptor as well, because I do have occasional moments where I feel fine being like just a normal guy, but most of the time, like right now, I do feel very dysphoric. And that's why I'm asking you guys for any help that you can give me, because my situation right now, I don't really see any way outside of you guys' help. Because, and this is gonna be kept short and concise, I live with my parents. They're never going to accept me as a trans person. They just never will. And as a matter of fact, back when I started the YouTube channel, I was actually kind of slightly starting my transition back then, with like starting to grow out my hair. I even got to DIY HRT, but because my parents started noticing certain things, like my behavior had changed a lot and my clothes had changed a lot, I kind of had to stop doing that because they were constantly nagging me about cutting my hair and just started to kind of be threatening in a certain way, and felt like they were ashamed of me and everything. And that just kind of stress just tired me out to the point where I just gave up. But as dysphoria goes, it just doesn't go away, you know. I still feel like this, and in fact it's somewhat been intensifying again recently, so I just wanted to share this with you guys. And again, I would really appreciate any amount of support you can give me in regards to this, because I just don't see any way out of this. Because even if I moved out of my parents' house and got myself a job and everything, that's just not gonna work for long-term planning, because once I transition, it's like I probably will not be able to get myself a job, because my country is very transphobic. Nobody gives a shit about LGBT people at all. So there's not even much I can do even in terms of transitioning here. So yeah, I don't know. I just would appreciate any amount of support you can give me, be it monetarily or in any way otherwise. And this is not about boosting my channel or anything, or guilt tripping you with my sob story. I just wanted to get this off my chest and make my subscribers aware of the situation that I am in, and that I would appreciate anything that you guys can help me out with. It would mean literally everything. Like, for example, a friend that I made after starting this YouTube channel, my good friend Yuri, has been helping me out a lot. And I genuinely might have not been here if it wasn't for him showing up and befriending me. So yeah, this just went a little bit longer than I intended, but I would just really appreciate anything you can support me with. That's kind of ultimately what I'm trying to say. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description to my Twitter if you want to follow me over there, and to my Wattpad where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos for my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you enjoy my stories or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Coffee account where you can pledge your support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think this is pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!